comes after weeks of viral videos from a young man YouTuber who was literally creeping around daycares by himself, making claims about fraud that were not there. And then the vice president and the FBI director were retweeting these videos without even verifying if they were true. So we're not accusing people of being xenophobic and racist. They are being xenophobic and racist, including the President of the United States. And I want to say, for one, that I stand with the Somali and the immigrant community standing here.
The first portion of the exchange focuses on accusations of xenophobia and racism that arose during discussions about alleged fraud connected to certain government assistance programs. One speaker argues that criticism directed toward specific communities is being interpreted as discriminatory, while others maintain that the concerns are legitimate policy questions rather than prejudice. In this moment, the speaker publicly expresses solidarity with Somali and immigrant communities, emphasizing that they should not be unfairly targeted or blamed for broader political disputes. The statement reflects an attempt to separate the discussion of alleged financial misconduct from the treatment of immigrant populations. By highlighting the importance of standing with immigrant communities, the speaker frames the debate as one that must be handled carefully to avoid reinforcing harmful stereotypes or creating unnecessary division.
Well, we just had one of my Democrat colleagues said these are just opinions. You know, are these guys donating money back to Democrats?
Yes, they are.
I'd like to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, an article from Breitbart News saying, with the title being Database Searches Show Somali Fraudsters Funding Democrat Politicians. So these aren't opinions.
Without objection.
There's actually reporting on this. Then are you just hearing from Republicans on this, or are Democrat constituents like, oh my God, I'm struggling to put my kids in school, struggling to make ends meet, and my tax dollars are being robbed by people, and then they're sending it all over the place, and this is complete fraud. What is going on, and why hasn't anything been done about it?
In the next segment, the discussion shifts toward allegations that individuals connected to fraudulent activities may have donated money to political campaigns. A lawmaker raises this issue directly, asking witnesses whether those involved in the alleged schemes contributed financially to Democratic politicians. To support the point, the lawmaker requests that an article be entered into the official record, presenting it as evidence that reporting exists on the matter. The purpose of introducing the article is to demonstrate that the claims being discussed are not simply opinions but are based on investigative reporting and publicly available information. This moment reflects a common practice in congressional hearings where lawmakers place documents into the record to support their arguments and ensure that those materials become part of the official proceedings.
I'll give you a personal example. So my family, my in-laws in particular, are politically diverse. A lot of them vote for Democrats, and they're fairly apolitical. They're not like me, all plugged in. And so I kind of use them as a bellwether for what the people are thinking. Across the board, everybody is upset about this fraud.
And I'm guessing when you guys bring this up, whether it's to the Waltz administration, whether it's to the AG, the number one thing that comes back at you is you're a racist, you're a white supremacist, or you're an Islamophobe. As we've seen Governor Waltz now trying to answer for these questions, he's doing it at the national level. Do you guys hear the same thing at the state level as well?
Yes, absolutely. They always pivot to the divisive, as I stated in my opening statement, it's diversion, right? We're going to talk about personalities, we're going to talk about partisan politics, we're going to find some way to get people yelling at each other rather than looking at the problem.
Or, like you've heard my colleagues do on this panel, it's Donald Trump, baby.
Yep.
It's all about Donald Trump, right? The old pivot. We're not going to talk about what's going on in Somalia and not going to talk about what's going on in Minnesota with this massive fraud scandal. We're going to talk about Donald Trump. With my remaining seconds, can we play the video I have, Mr. Chairman?
The conversation then moves toward the reaction of ordinary citizens who are following the issue. The speaker explains that concerns about alleged fraud are not limited to one political group but are shared by individuals across the political spectrum. According to the testimony, some families feel frustrated when they hear about potential misuse of taxpayer funds while they themselves are struggling with everyday financial challenges such as paying for school, housing, or basic living expenses. The speaker illustrates this point by referring to personal conversations with relatives and acquaintances who are not heavily involved in politics but still express concern about government oversight. By highlighting these reactions, the speaker argues that the issue resonates with many voters regardless of party affiliation, suggesting that the controversy extends beyond partisan debate.
horta aad iyo aad aan ugu faraxsanahay in maanta safaari aan soo gaarnay sida dadka badan ay u og yihiin ciyaalkeena yaryar ilaa iyo number la eg 20 milyan oo ciyaal iskuuley ah waxay cuntadooda ka helaan iskoolka keliyo marka waxaan fursad u helnay in aan sharci soo gudbino oo la dhahayo Meals Act oo u fududeynayo in waqtigaanay pandemic aan ku jirno oo dhalinyarada iskoolka aynan joogin oo guryahooda ay joogaan aynan gaajoonin oo familkoodii wili ay fursad u helaan in cunto ay helaan oo meelo qaarkood laga qaybinayo ay cuntada ka soo qaadan karaan marka aadaan ugu mahadcelinayaa safari in ay tahay meelaha city oo diyaarinayo cunto maalin kasto dhalinyarada ciyalkii iyo familkoodina ku taakuleynayo cuntada city maalintii kaliyo safari waxay cunto siisaa 2300 oo ciyaal ah iyo familkooda taas waa mid muhiim ah sida aad u ogtihiin dhalinyaro badan gaajo ku nool wadankaaniti ama familkooda fursad u helin in quraac qada iyo casho ay siiso marka in qadada city ay meel ka helaan aad ay u muhiimsan tahay bishan ramadaanka oo familiyaalkeena badan iyagoo aan shaqo haysanin iyagoo aan taakulayn kale helaynin in aynan ka walwalin ciyaalkooda yaryar sidii ay qada ku siin lahaayeen waa muhiim marka waxaan u mahadcelinayaa safari oo kaleete iyo dadka badan oo maalin ilaahay keeno fursad u qaatay in ay u volunteer gareeyaan oo ay taakuleeyaan familiyaalka.
In the fourth section of the hearing, lawmakers questioned state officials about how criticism of these alleged fraud cases is handled by government leaders. The central concern raised is that when questions about the issue are brought forward, the response often shifts away from investigating the allegations themselves. Instead, critics may be labeled as racist, Islamophobic, or politically motivated. According to the testimony, this response can create an environment in which meaningful discussion about the problem becomes difficult because attention moves toward personal accusations rather than the substance of the claims. Witnesses describe this pattern as a form of diversion that prevents serious examination of the evidence and delays potential reforms. The exchange illustrates how political disagreements can sometimes transform policy discussions into broader debates about motives and rhetoric.
One thing that is so alarming is the reporting that many of these fraudulent companies are then donating the stolen money back to the same Democrats that are protecting them and advocate for these very programs. Is that correct, Mr. Hudson?
I would agree with that statement.
Well, we just had one of my Democrat colleagues said these are just opinions. You know, are these guys donating money back to Democrats?
Yes, they are.
I'd like to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, an article from Breitbart News saying, with the title being Database Searches Show Somali Fraudsters Funding Democrat Politicians. So these aren't opinions.
Without objection.
There's actually reporting on this. Are you guys aware? You guys are elected officials in Minnesota, right? Are you guys aware of the reporting that some of the stolen money is getting funneled back to the Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab in Somalia? Mr. Robbins.
Yes, sir. And we have evidence of it going back as far as 2012, where a man was convicted of sending $21,000 to Al-Shabaab. In 2011, 2 Minnesota women were convicted of sending money to different groups. Someone else, we have multiple references of how the Al-Shabaab takes a cut when the money gets to Somalia through the Hawala network. So I think there's ample evidence on this and federal convictions.
Yeah. That's outrageous.
The final portion of the original discussion addresses concerns that some funds connected to fraudulent activities may have been transferred overseas through informal financial networks. Witnesses reference previous cases in which individuals were convicted in federal court for sending money to extremist organizations abroad. According to the testimony, these incidents date back more than a decade and involved relatively small but significant transfers that raised national security concerns. The witnesses explain that certain money transfer systems operating outside traditional banking channels can make tracking financial flows more difficult. By mentioning past prosecutions and documented cases, the testimony attempts to demonstrate that authorities have previously investigated similar situations and obtained convictions. The broader implication of this section is that financial oversight and transparency remain critical when large public programs distribute funds quickly, especially during emergency situations such as pandemic relief efforts.